Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Car Boss, where we talk about the business of automotive dealership. Welcome back, Commander.
Good morning, Taj. Namaskar to everyone.
Commander, our topic of discussion today is how to achieve consistent revenue from after sales operations and is split in two episodes. So, our first question for you today is, as we both agree that consistent revenue is imperative to sustain dealership viability, and to achieve this, customer retention plays a critical role. What triggers loss of customers in after sales?
Right. I think if you look at the dynamics of dealership operations, you will find it's become very obvious that the focus, the emphasis of the dealership is more on new car sales. Now, there's nothing wrong in it because, after all, if you don't sell cars, after sales don't happen.
True.
So we definitely need to put that emphasis on new car sales. It's also because of the fact that if you look at the OEMs, they're always putting the focus and the kind of emphasis on new car sales because that's what they display in the public domain. How many cars has this particular brand sold, and you don't come across OEMs talking about how many cars came for after sales service, what are the kind of revenues earned by dealerships. These are not things that ever discussed in the public domain. So everyone is focusing on the new car sales.
True.
Fair enough, there is nothing against it. But I think what we need to understand, very important, and we shouldn't lose focus of this, is that if you look at revenues from new car sales, this is something that fluctuates very, very widely, especially in Indian circumstances. How that happens is, if there is demand for a particular car and there's a shortage of supply, definitely, dealers are able to retain their, sales margins or whatever margins they earn. Now, this happened especially during COVID and post-COVID when there was a huge shortage of cars and there was big demand, and all the dealers were happy because they were retaining their full margin. There were no discounts.
True.
But when the sales start to falter, when the stock goes up, the demand reduces, then there is hell to pay. Then you find that dealers are giving discounts. The OEMs are forcing dealers to give more and more discounts. And finally, what happens is you are not able to sustain your operations on the revenues that you generate. In fact, you will be in the minus because the kind of discounts that you offer during this kind of time. Now, dealership operations to sustain and remain viable, you need to have other sources of revenue. And the most important and the only other source can sustain a dealership is after sales. Now, in the case of after sales, customers have no choice. There are no seasonal ups and downs. People keep coming regularly for service. So the revenue should come in from after sales. But if there is going to be an attrition in the number of customers coming to you, that's a cause of big worry. And what is today happening is that there are dealerships reporting 40% and more attrition over the previous year in terms of customers turning up for after sales service.
Wow.
Now, this can be really, really disastrous. And, the moment you put this question to the leadership team at the after sales or the service advisors, the normal refrain is what? Oh, the customers are not coming because our cost of service is very high. They are all going to local garages, etc. This is something which is just an excuse, and I really don't buy it.
True.
Yes, definitely there are certain customers, when the car gets very old, they may not go to authorized dealers. They might go to local garages, but that's a very less. But if you really look at the cost of operations of local garages, it's not that they can afford to give huge discounts and make services very cheap compared to normal authorized dealers. Because if you look at the parts cost for an authorized dealer is much less than for a local garage, because the local garage guys have to buy from the authorized dealers or from vendors designated by the OEMs.
True.
So they don't have the advantage of a price as far as parts are concerned. Now, when it comes to the labor, they also have to have trained technicians. It's no more of those kinds when you could take chances with untrained technicians who have no technical background. So they cannot afford to be giving less salaries or having less cost. So they could be a 5% or a 10% discount in labor. But that really doesn't translate into any great advantage for the customers. And don't forget, when you go to a local garage, they could be cutting corners as far as the labor is concerned. The
True.
kind of accountability on the service done is much less compared to a authorized dealer. So I don't think that customers are going in large numbers flocking towards local garages simply because of the price. That's something that is really definitely not the reason. So what's the reason for attrition? That's something that dealerships have to very, very closely look and analyze. And in my understanding, I would think there are three reasons. First, and the foremost is a lack of trust and confidence in the dealership. Now, when I say lack of trust and confidence, it is basically directed towards the service advisors because they are the people who deal with customers. So if they don't give the customers a sense of confidence and trust, because the way they conduct with the customers, their knowledge of the problems that the customer has got, and there is some kind of lack of transparency that comes in the dealings. Now these things really drives the customer to believe that, look, I am not very sure whether I want to stay with this dealership. I don't very sure whether the quality of job done by this guy is really good. So there is definitely a lack of trust and confidence in the dealership because of the quality of service.
Right.
That is a primary reason for people to move away. The second reason, to my understanding, is the actual technical quality of service.
Okay.
Now, many times customers, when they have serious job, serious kind of defects or problems, and they don't get those things addressed by the dealer, they lack to feel that, look, there is no reason for me to go back to this guy because the last time that I had a problem, he didn't resolve it and he kept reoccurring. So I
Right.
think there is a deficit as far as the quality of service with many dealerships because maybe the way of training, the quality of technicians they have, the processes that they follow, these things are something which is really definitely needs more attention. And if it is not done, then customers would think that the quality of service is poor, and that is the second reason as to why customers turn away from the dealerships.
Right.
And the third, very important, is a lack of connect between the dealership and the customers over a long period. Now, this we must understand because these days the interval between one service to the next is 1 year.
Yes.
If you ask a customer 6 months down the line after he's finished his service, who was the service advisor he dealt with, I can assure you 90% of customers won't even remember.
True.
So there is no connect. So when it comes to his next service, he says, "Look, I don't know any particular person in this dealership. I didn't have a great experience. The quality of service was not very good. So why should I go back to them? I can go back to a dealership which is closer to my place of residence or work,
Hmm.
or I would look at the Google rating and say, okay, this dealership has a better Google rating than somebody else. I would go to him." So you see that these are the reasons why what is driving away, and it's a trend which is really, really catching on because there is no trust and confidence. There is the quality of work done by the dealership is substandard, is suspect. The third is there is no long-term connect. Now, these are the three reasons as to why today some of the dealerships, I won't say all the dealership,
Yeah.
some of the dealerships are experiencing very severe attrition. And if that continues, the entire viability of operations becomes really, really going to be difficult
Difficult.
because you have sales dipping, the revenue is coming down, you have attrition in customers, your service revenue is coming down. So this is something that dealerships have to address. Finding excuses in local garages is just, fooling yourself. That's not the reason. The reason is these three things that I mentioned.
So there you have the answer to this often overlooked aspect of operations. Stay tuned for our second episode, which answers the second question. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see you in the next one.